In 1896, the Supreme Court ruled in Plessy v. Ferguson that racially segregated public facilities were illegal so long as the facilities for blacks and whites were equal. You have a drinking fountain, I have a drinking fountain, equal. You remember a boy Homer Plessy way back in episode 38? The ruling constitutionally sanctioned laws barring African Americans from sharing the same buses, schools, and other public facilities as whites, and established a separate but equal doctrine. Look at these two classrooms from the 1950s. Would you say these kids are getting an equal quality of education? By the early 1950s, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, more commonly called the NAACP, was working hard to challenge segregation laws in public schools. They were of course met with protest. Look at these folks. Race mixing is communism? That's a stretch, don't you think? See how they are playing on those Cold War fears. When we think of the civil rights movement, the things that come to our mind is Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and how the two of them ended racism in the United States for good. But no, the civil rights movement involved countless of individuals that took up the mantle for equality. A bunch of ordinary people will do extraordinary things. The first of these brave individuals were perhaps the most unassuming and innocent. It was the children. It was the children who were on the front lines carrying the brunt of the civil rights movement, feeling the hatred and the bigotry firsthand. They faced screaming mobs, being called ugly names, being spat on, and death threats, just for trying to go to school. The first was little Linda Brown, a third grader from Kansas. She lived near a school for white children, but she had to travel all the way across town to attend a school for black children like her. Her father, Oliver Brown, tried to enroll her into the nearby school, but was denied entry. With the help of the NAACP, Brown sued the Topeka's all-white elementary schools, and the case went to the Supreme Court. In his lawsuit, Brown claimed that the schools for black children were not equal to the white schools, and that segregation violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which says that no state can deny to any person equal protection of the laws. Thurgood Marshall, the head of the NAACP legal defense, served as the chief attorney on Brown's behalf. The Supreme Court did rule that being deprived of the equal protection of the laws guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, segregated schools are inherently unequal and ordered public schools to integrate as soon as possible. Wait, did the Supreme Court just make a good decision? Let's make sure we have these terms straight. To segregate is to keep separate. In this case, blacks and whites are kept apart. Desegregate is the opposite. It is when two groups come together. Another term will be to integrate, which is when the schools are required to allow other races to enroll in that school. As you probably predicted, this will be difficult to enforce.
Okay, Miss Bridges.
Don't mind them, Ruby. Keep walking.
Get back, you scum!
In the entire South, only 3 school districts began to desegregate in 1954. In Little Rock, Arkansas, the school board started to integrate one high school. The school board approved 9 outstanding black students to attend Central High School. These students became known as the Little Rock Nine. Little did these high schoolers know their first day of school will be on the front page of newspapers all over the world. The Arkansas governor, Orville Faubus, worked to prevent desegregation at Central High School. In other words, he did not want these black students going to Central High. So he called on the Arkansas National Guard troops to block the Little Rock Nine from entering the school that first day. September 4th, 1957. 8 of the 9 students arrive at the school together, and they were turned away by the National Guard. The other student, 15-year-old Elizabeth Eckford, arrived at the school all by herself. She was all alone and was quickly swarmed by a screaming mob. Elizabeth goes to the National Guard believing they were in place to help her, but when she tries to get past them, they just block her path and do nothing to defend the teenager from the mob. Elizabeth was forced to turn around and walk as calmly as she could back to the bus stop, as people called her horrible names and spat on her. And you thought you had some bad days at school. The pictures of Elizabeth calmly walking through a mob was in all the papers. People saw that and couldn't believe the clear hatred shown on the faces aimed at a 15-year-old girl trying to go to school. It was an embarrassment for the United States. Thurgood Marshall took this case to the courts. Arkansas's refusal to allow these children into school and not obey the Supreme Court decision forced the hand of the president. President Eisenhower sent federal troops, the 101st Airborne Division, to escort these students into school and from class to class. These are experienced soldiers who fought in World War II, and now they are there to make sure Jefferson got to his 3rd period algebra class on time. Life in Central High was not easy for the 9. The soldiers were there at first to make sure they got into the school okay, but they could do nothing to stop the bullying that took place that entire year. Melba Patillo, for instance, was kicked, beaten, and had acid thrown in her face. Gloria Ray was pushed down a flight of stairs. And the Little Rock 9 were barred from participating in extracurricular activities. But in May 1958, Ernest Green, the only senior in the group, became the first African-American student to graduate from Central High. At his graduation ceremony, Martin Luther King Jr. came out to support him. Green will go on to serve as an assistant secretary under President Jimmy Carter. The lawyer Thurgood Marshall will go on to become the first Black Supreme Court justice. Change is slow, but it does happen.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to rise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly.